Live deprogram. This is Dawn of the New Day. One-Eyed Jack and the Murder Hornets. Murder Hornets was kind of some kind of a lockdown for murder hornets. It'd be kind of like the Birds with Hitchcock, but way crazier. All right, let's get into the main news. Lots of developments. We had a great call last night with Drastic Liars, who brought up some fascinating connections here with the Rodney Hinton Jr. killing of the cop. And the cop, as JL pointed out, has the 6/11 birthday, which is in itself interesting. But anyone here care to guess? How many years did he serve before he retired? This retired deputy who was killed by Rodney Hinton Jr., who, by the way, is being looked at as another Luigi, as we'll get into. Now, you shouldn't know the answer to this because you're not psychic, but most of you listening will know the answer. How many years? Michelle K says 33, yes. And I am going to create a 33 sticker, so I can send a free sticker to whoever wins these pop quizzes. And just a little hint, if there's a pop quiz, the answer is going to be 33, generally speaking. But think about that, 6/11/33. Where have we heard that before? McVeigh executed at 33 on 6/11. Trump shot at 6:11 p.m., 33 seconds. And then you can also connect Waco to all this thing. You know, the whole thing with Waco has to do with Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco just after Netflix releases Waco, American Apocalypse. And Waco was the place where McVeigh was inspired to go against the government. So you have that connection. And then you had, of course, Dave Koresh incinerated. And on the anniversary of Waco last year, when Trump was on trial, you had Maxwell Azarello setting himself on fire outside of the courthouse. And he had a manifesto. His general message was pretty much the class warfare thing. It really came down to class warfare, which ties into the Joker theme as we discussed at the time. Let me bring this up. I was just, before I was messing with Grok because I recently published onto Amazon a how-to guide for how to write a novella with AI, specifically Grok, but you can use anything. Just Grok doesn't have the rate limits. But the idea here is, could you write a 50-page novella that is internally consistent, coherent, and would rate highly in the marketplace in like an hour? And yes, if you're so inclined, I do have a manual for that. But a little while ago, I was testing it out, and I just made the story here. Brenton Tarrant, well, not a story, but I had this hypothetical situation expounded on. Brenton Tarrant versus Luigi Mangione, who would win in a death match? And I have this pretty lengthy description of who would win, Luigi versus Brenton Tarrant. You know, shout out to PewDiePie, Christchurch shooter. And it's kind of interesting to pair these things up, and it got me thinking about how we're really talking about a fictional universe. It's like a comic book universe, like the Marvel universe. And just the other day, they released that Thunderbolts, which they renamed the New Avengers, the Marvel Comics universe. And someone let me know that I have to watch it because apparently it has some Trump-esque character, obviously concurrent programming we should expect. But I saw the trailer, and there's a bunch of stuff falling from the sky. Yesterday we were talking about, was it Eternaut, the one about the snow that kills people, and how this correlates with the theme of nuclear winter and fallout, which have been consistent in all of the programming. And during our conversation about, I alluded to Matthew Modine's character dies or gets shot, which is relevant to our conversation here because he's the guy that plays Joker in Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, who's essentially a stand-in for JFK. And I alluded to how the season finale has the ground open up like an earthquake. And we were talking about me and Jurassic Liars, we were discussing the potential for an earthquake in Seattle or some kind of event that involves the land being split wide open. And in that season finale of Stranger Things, and I posted a video, you can look at the trailer on YouTube. It has the ground just, splitting wide open. The upside down is what they called it, the underworld, breaking through the surface. And this is followed by ashes raining down from the sky. So this is a reoccurring theme. And it's been brought back with this latest Netflix, which I'm about to start watching, with the idea of an airborne threat being hyped up in all these various areas, combined with the idea of a blackout and fallout, seems to be where this thing's headed, if we're looking at the general messaging. And I think this might also correspond with the Marilyn Manson cover of In the Air Tonight. Someone had brought this up, and we were talking about Manson's connections to various psyops, from Littleton to his cryptic references to this JFK stuff and Kubrick references. In fact, his last album, One Assassination Under God, came out on 11/22. He closes his set with Coma White, which is a song which has a video where he plays JFK getting assassinated. So you have those connections. And there's a number of music reviews for his cover of In the Air Tonight. And one of the phrases that I saw in a lot of these kind of, press release type articles was they commented on Marilyn Manson's quote, Kubrick stare. So there's Kubrick all over it. So the fact that he has a song at this time, which is like number 1 on the Billboard or number 2 or something, we're talking about force memes, total echo chamber, total saturation with an idea to create an echo chamber. And so against all of this visual and the movies, these propaganda films depicting fallout in various forms, we have this song about something in the air tonight. And given all of his other connections to the PSYOP entertainment complex, I think it might be relevant. Another reason I would judge it so is its popularity. If something is put out there where it's practically impossible not to come across it, then you were meant to see it. Dr. Bass Ackwards says Elon and Trump have totally become comic book characters. Well, the concept of the fictional universe is what I'm really alluding to here, because each of these mass shooters references the others with their manifestos, or they go to the same Discord servers. We've had instances of various shooters in connection with Discord servers that kind of overlap, like that kid named Henderson. That's what that name came. It was Solomon Henderson, I think his name was. He was the one who wore the Burzum shirt, and I said that this was going to reference Kanye, and it did. But he had been in communication with this female school shooter, right? And so they connect them all within a fictional universe. So the Marvel universe is a perfect example of this. It's an agreed upon set of rules, and any story you write can exist as long as it obeys those rules. So mainstream media is a closed informational system, a fictional universe for all intents and purposes. But the conspiracy theories exist within that as a subset, because even though they go against the mainstream, they're acknowledged. It's kind of like the foil or the heel. It's part of the ecosystem. Now, if you're discussing something that is from outside their fictional universe, in fact, if you're even talking about it being a fictional universe, you don't get any airtime. You don't get in. Just like Bugs Bunny doesn't get into Disneyland. You see, it's a controlled paradigm and a closed informational system. What's up, Esteban, Lord Laney, Roxy W? Roxy W says Christchurch was a phony setup to implicate PewDiePie. Well, they were trying to connect PewDiePie with 4chan memes, and he's platforming dangerous ideas. Absolutely. And the Christchurch event is very useful for a lot of reasons. In fact, I just heard Fakeologist on his program. If you go to autohoax.com, I actually have a link. You can listen to IPS archives or Fakeologist. I put Jurassic Liars on there. And he was talking to someone about the pit maneuvers. And pit maneuvers refer to when the police run someone off the road and pull them out of the car. to make the arrest. And at the Christchurch shooting, after the second mosque he shot up, he is driving down the street, and there's a bunch of police there doing drills for pit maneuvers. So they're in full body armor, dressed for the occasion, rehearsing pit maneuvers, and then down the street comes Brent and Tarrant, and they do a pit maneuver and pull him out. And the news media at the time remarked on this as a coincidence. Similarly, there were bomb drills going on the other side of the town, which corresponded with this event. And again, eerie coincidences abound on the world stage. Laura Laney says, I'm seeing a lot of vigilante retaliation against the cop stories, almost right on cue for left-wing agitation. Well, let's get into that, because this is all by design. For example, we're talking about Rodney Hinton Jr., and I've already heard someone compare him to Rodney King, because we're talking about systemic racism and systemic injustice. Now, this individual is in the news now because his son was shot by the police. And the footage, it makes it look like he was shot in the back. So there's a lot of people kind of angry about what exactly happened here. Here he is. And a lot of people on the left are saying, if you're a fan of Luigi and you're not a fan of Rodney Hinton, then you're a racist. And I even pointed out yesterday or 2 days ago, I said, look, they have this Rodney Hinton in orange with a backdrop of cops, like 30 cops in the room. It looks just like the perp walk with Luigi. So there's a class warfare message being conveyed here, kind of a Joker-esque anti-hero. But he killed a cop in retaliation for his son being killed. He saw the video of the shooting, and he goes out and kills the cop who had the 6/11 birthday. Now, this guy just retired. He's a deputy doing traffic work, spent 33 years in the force. So these are all kind of indicators that we're looking at a psyop, a setup, a stage thing to get the public polarized again. But they're looking at him as a hero, as you'll see. But then another thing happened. High schoolers, and get this, 3 a.m., these 3 high schoolers do a knock-knock prank on a Virginia home, and the homeowner comes out and he shoots one of them dead. Then I guess he gets arrested and charged with murder. And people are pointing out double standard because they're thinking that maybe these teens were trying to rob the guy. How do we know it wasn't self by Anthony Carmelo, who says it was self-defense? So now what we're looking at here is, does the system have a double standard when it comes to how they consider something to be self-defense? And with Ryan Hinton, the son of the Rodney Hinton, in that case, and what looks so inflammatory is it appears that he was running from the police. Even if he picked up his gun, it looks like he was shot in the back. Nobody was really threatened, but they've also blurred the body cam footage. It's being suggested they actually blurred it. So I'm seeing a lot of rumblings here that this was a justified retaliation against the police. And now we have this other guy. Now this guy, the guy who shot the people playing the prank on him, this individual's name is very interesting. It's Tyler Butler. Tyler Butler. So, of course, Tyler has a lot of connections. Like we talked about the Rodney King-esque beating of Tyree Nichols and how the name Tyree has a lot of connections. Like they cloned Tyrone. You had Tyreek Hill. There's a certain name in here that I believe refers to it has, as you'll see, we'll probably go through all of them, but there's a common theme here with this martyr psyop, and we kind of see various permutations of the same name. So this individual's name being Tyree is kind of interesting, but Butler, as in Butler, Pennsylvania, kind of stood out to me as well. And here's a picture of the teenager that he shot, and he's playing lacrosse. So now let's look at the Jordan Peele death on the subway, choked to death by Daniel Penny. Now, Daniel Penny gets out as Luigi gets put into prison. And we're looking at this story unfolding. And when that story happened, Daniel Penny was a vigilante to the right and a killer to the left. Just like Luigi is a killer to the right and a vigilante to the left. Well, the interesting thing here about Daniel Penny is that, one, he was presented as a lacrosse player. And in the movie Get Out, which we connected with that particular event, the Jordan Peele movie, the antagonist looks like Daniel Penny, plays lacrosse, and chokes one of the. He's a strangler. So there's one of these instances of a pretty strong parallel between a particular movie and a particular psyop. And it goes even deeper, as we often discuss. But the common thing here is what's with the association of the lacrosse player in this particular event, in the Daniel Penny event, in Get Out? What does it mean? And Synchromorpheus had dug something up here about the perception of lacrosse being predominantly let me get the headline for you. This is a great find, by the way. Lacrosse is known as a sports played by rich white people. This Salt Lake City school program is trying to change that. So we're talking about the symbolism of this game. What does it represent? Kind of an interesting thing. And as we go through my feed, you'll see some examples. Synchromorpheus has been taking various characters in these psyops and using AI to superimpose their movie counterparts. So for example, I think I have one earmarked here. We'll get to them. I had just done one earlier. That's right. So I saw this image of Rodney Hinton Jr. being shared by a lot of people, and it seems like they're trying to make him look like he's righteous and defiant, and that we should take his side. He's standing up against this corrupt system. And that was actually the exact story, by the way, in Rebel Ridge. So Rebel Ridge had a character at the very beginning, a black man on a bike with a bag of money trying to bail out his cousin, gets pulled over by the police. They take his money, beat him up. And right after this, Tyreek Hill was pulled out of his car roughly by the police on his way to a game. And this Rebel Ridge was a reference point. A lot of people said, hey, this is just like what happened on Netflix. And the character's name in that movie was, I think it was Tyrell, it was same name. But here's the image of him, Rodney Hinton Jr. A lot of glorification. So what I did is I took his image into Grok and I said, would you put a green Luigi beret on him? So here's an image of him, knowing that they would be making this association. And sure enough, it's happening. And it's happening in the feeds that I'm watching, where people are responding to this and they're just organically arriving at these connections because they've been steered this direction. So this is a manufactured anti-hero, a manufactured, I mean, he's a hero to one side, but it's more of an anti-hero angle because he's challenging a corrupt system. But anyway, he's looked at as an avenger, that this is a father taking revenge on his son's killers. Terrible moral equivalencies being made here. Here's an example of what Synchromorpheus did. This is the foosball character in Fallout, which shows up at a very conspicuous time in the film. And when we saw this, I screen captured it, and I said, hey, this foosball character looks just like Trump. And it had a little spot of blood on the side of its head, foreshadowing Butler, Pennsylvania, which hadn't happened yet, which is why we were talking about it. We said, look, here's another example. They're going to bloody up the side of Trump's face, which they did. And there were many details about this particular story that had me connect this foosball character to Trump before I knew that this had already been made by the creators of Fallout. They've already made these associations between this particular character. It's been memed as Trump. So the correlations are already there. But I made that connection based on context. But here, Synchromorpheus actually made it look more Trump-like. But it's an interesting concept of, for example, we talk about these various movies. You have characters that represent Trump, or like, I would like to go take Senator McLaughlin from Machete and then put Trump's face over it, for example. Have a new PSYOP trading card. This one's called Class War. I've got Luigi as Robin Hood, chasing down a CEO. I think I put that in the newsletter. What date is the foosball from? Good question. There's a foosball game in the Fallout series, and it's this location, the scene where there was a stolen election for Vault 33, and there was some massacre that was covered up, and the only evidence left was one spot of blood that just happened to be on the side of the head of the character that looks like Trump. The person orchestrating it, Betty Pearson, very significant if you get to the symbolism of the names and the numbers and all this. It's so consistent. I'd say it's unbelievable. We have receipts we can show you, but clearly a Kamala Harris representative. And again, Kamala Harris was at that Met Gala wearing a black and white dress, representing this duality. Not insignificant. It's not insignificant that the Met Gala's whole theme was civil rights activists and civil rights fashion. And then you had that, I don't know who she is. Some actress shows up with the Rosa Parks panties. All right, so let's continue going through my notes. So a lacrosse player killed after pranking a man by knocking at his door at 3 a.m., which doesn't sound like a prank to me. And the guy's name is Tyler Butler. Interesting. The Rodney character, Rodney Hinton Jr., kills a cop with a 6/11 birthday, a cop who had served 33 years. Again, these numbers. 6/11, 33, Trump getting shot, 6:11 p.m., 33 seconds. Like, there is a pattern here that we have picked up on, and we're just going through it daily, piling up the evidence in support of our model. And I deal with confused people all the time. I find it to be very educational. So I was having a conversation with one individual on Twitter who was insisting that Trump did actually get shot in the ear. And, we're getting into this whole debate. And I said, if you find this proposition challenging, that they could even fake it, then you won't ask follow-up questions that would steer you to an understanding. So, in other words, if this is true, then what? What are the follow-up questions? Like, entertain the hypothetical. You say, hey, I think he faked it. And people say, no, they balk at it and they never go any further. That's a guardrail. The guardrail is when they hit, it's like a wall. It's just a barrier. They can't go any further. But I say, mentally, hypothetically, just jump the barrier. What if he faked it? Well, there's a list of things that are attached to that, a list of people involved by necessity. It raises a lot of questions about a lot of things, but you can't separate it from any other event, including January 6th. And I came into this, I looked at the Butler, Pennsylvania thing as it happened, but my attitude even at that point was, well, January 6th was a total hoax, a staged riot. MAGA hasn't figured this out, and they never will. 90% of Trutherville doesn't realize this, nor do they understand the staggering implications for the fact that January 6th itself was a theatrical performance, a psyop, a mass, not even a mass casualty operation, but they have them on that scale. It was just theatrical. You had a couple of deaths, and they weren't even realistic. And the Ashley Babbitt character clearly wasn't killed. There were jump cuts in the editing. So many red flags. If you haven't seen the work of Woo's News, I recommend it. Although he could be a limited hangout operation. I wouldn't be shocked. I have reasons, but I'll leave it at that. But I will say there's enough to substantiate the notion that January 6th was totally contrived and fake, and that all those people who were watching Trump speaking when he said, run to the Capitol, well, they were still listening to him when the riots had started 45 minutes away. So they didn't listen to Trump, get riled up, and then run up the hill for 45 minutes. And you've seen these MAGAs. There's no way they're running a 45-minute distance there. The riot had already started. And people who weren't part of the PSYOP weren't allowed in. It was a closed set. There were even some people who had watched some individuals change clothes, like getting costumed up. So it was staged, all of it. So if it was staged, Trump was a part of it. You cannot make the argument here that it was staged and Trump didn't know, that he's that insulated from the truth. No, this has significant implications for all the people involved, all the operatives, Ray Epps, Baked Alaska, the QAnon shaman Jake Chansley, who was 33 at the time when he ran to the Capitol with a spear and didn't get shot, which is surprising. It was a huge LARP. Lean Dion says Q Shaman was and still is a hero. Yeah, he's like, Q sent me. And where the hell is Q? The world hasn't caught up to this yet. But my point being here is that if January 6th was a major psyop and Trump was a part of it, then why would they want to assassinate him? He's part of, see, there is no deep state. There is only the state. The idea that there's a deep state and a shallow state that's not as bad, or limited government, no, that's a huge psyop hoax in itself. No truth to that. And I don't even think of governments, plural. I think there's just one big G. One government. It's a monolithic entity. There's a one world religion. You were born into it. And unless you've consciously objected to it and deprogrammed from it, you're actually in it. And I've come to these conclusions lately, having examined all these different issues and how the Psy War is bifurcated, that a lot of the conspiracy theorists aren't awake, but they're actually casualties of the mind war. You're not awake because somebody convinced you to be afraid of radio towers. No, you're a victim of the mind war. If I convinced you that there's monsters under your bed, I didn't empower you. You're not awake to a threat, and you got to convince everybody else that there's monsters under their beds. No, you're superstitious, and you have been locked into a fear-based paradigm. That's mind control. So we have to have a little compassion for our mind-controlled red pill addicts, propaganda mules, Q pipe addicts, and those who are still drinking the Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown. And Alex Jones and James O'Keefe have really kind of had a little bit of a fall from grace in the last few days, because they hyped up this information. James O'Keefe said, I'm going into hiding because they're going to kill me. I'm not suicidal. James O'Keefe goes into hiding. He's going to drop something big. Alex Jones hypes it up, and he's going to prove that Bondi was hiding information that would otherwise have allowed the victims of Epstein's, or the human traffickers that worked with Epstein, to be exposed. So Jones is hyping it up. O'Keefe is going into hiding. And what happens? James O'Keefe comes out with his nothing burger. He's telling us something that we already knew. And a lot of people aren't happy about it, specifically people who are alleging themselves to be victims of it, because they're like, wait, you're going into hiding and hyping up something for clicks. And we're here talking about it every day. I mean, it's just, people are looking at this as just clickbait, engagement bait, which is what it is. Now, let's continue through my notes, and then we'll get to these recent psyops. I mean, there's a lot on our plate right now. It's a psyop-rich environment. It's all race war stuff. I predicted this would be the case with the advent of the Sinners movie just coming up. And I'm like, wait, there's no way that this movie's coming out with white vampires, heavily racialized environment, Klansmen, and all this, and it's not going to have a real world counterpart. And then we have the Austin Metcalf stabbing, and this has been framed as a black on white thing. It's a racialized psyop, hyped up by none other than a January 6er, Jake Lang. So you got a January 6th crisis actor hyping up this stabbing psyop and trying to turn this victim into a white Trayvon Martin against his father's wishes. So they're trying to do this White Lives Matter thing. And then this is followed up, of course, then by these other psyops. For example, Shiloh Hendricks throwing the N-word at an autistic kid. And now you have the crowdfunding competing with Anthony Carmelo's crowdfunding. That's become a huge story. And there are efforts right now to take away Shiloh's money on the basis that the fundraiser is supporting hate. And Give, Send, Go did, in fact, platform 4chan level rhetoric. But I don't know if they're going to take the money. She probably already has it, like $600K, if not more. And that's just what we know. I guarantee there were people sending money in other ways. If just, well, I can't really say for sure. I mean, if it's fake and it's a hoax, then who knows where the money's going? I don't think crisis actors see the money first. It has to go through their chain of command. But you got the Shiloh event hoax, and then you have the Ryan Hinton getting killed by the cops, and then his father taking revenge against the cop. And then finally, now let's get to this next one. Let's get to the Tyler Butler. And this one, again, is pointing at what appears to be a double standard in law enforcement. The argument here is that the only reason why these white kids are being accused of having done a prank and got killed for it, which is an innocent thing, and now this guy's a murderer, is that they were white. And if it weren't the case, it would have been seen as a homeowner defending his house against home invaders. So let me play this clip here about this case. So if you're not familiar with it, this was a knock-knock joke at 3 a.m. gone wrong. And this was in Pennsylvania. I think this is in Pennsylvania. I'm not really sure. I got to double check. But let's play this clip.
See, this that bullshit I be talking about. Let me zoom go a little. Let me go a little. So you mean to tell me that this man Butler is facing charges for some kids so-called pranking, and I don't care what they said, now it's a prank. That shit was not a prank. Nobody pranks going to house and kicking in their doors. That's not a prank. Because he shot and killed one teen and injured another one. Now he faces charges because they say it's a prank. Tell me.
Yeah, homeowner accused of murder and teen's death with a prank tie. So this was a TikTok prank as well. A TikTok prank. Homeowner accused of murder. His name is Tyler Butler. And he killed Michael Bosworth or Spotsy, and they were doing a ding-dong ditch prank. So the 18-year-old killed, and people are saying this guy shouldn't be charged with murder, but this is a double standard.
Anybody that pranks going to door, kicking in the doors. I'll wait. Yeah, and even if it was a prank, they deserve to die behind that prank. You know why? Because you shouldn't prank going to people's houses and kicking in doors. I don't think nobody pranking that because they know the consequences of it. Well, they thought Mr. Butler wasn't home, tried to kick the door open for a robbery. He was there. He answered with gunshots, killed somebody.
But now, just looking at the broader context, just a few random details here that stood out to me is you got the name Butler and Tyler, which are heavily relevant with these various cop killings. The name Butler, the association of Butler, Pennsylvania, another shooting. And then Rodney Hinton Jr. killing a cop with the 6/11/33 connection. Again, Trump shot 6:11 p.m., 33 seconds. Lots of interesting correlations between these various events in the small details that I don't think are minor details. You know, I look at these psyops as though they are Kubrick films, where every single prop, every little detail is there for a reason, meant to help advance or forward the story. But again, I'm seeing a lot of sympathy for this individual and for Rodney Hinton Jr., and I think people are trying to crowdfund for him.
And because white people don't want to tell the fucking truth and just say, hey, we got bad kids too. They make bad judgment decisions and they got their lives taken, and it's justified because they don't want to do that because the skin color of the man that killed him was black. So
with the Austin Metcalf killing, if Anthony Carmelo gets life, if he doesn't walk, it's going to be seen as injustice. The Rodney Hinton Jr. is already injustice. And now this case with Tyler Butler, injustice. In other words, we're seeing a buildup of resentment towards the systemic racism, not just the on the street level name calling on the playground stuff. And I think this doesn't really tie in to the Tyler Butler. These names are very significant, but remember Tyreek Hill, a Dolphins, NFL player, being pulled over and treated roughly right after Rebel Ridge. And Rebel Ridge's main character is treated in the exact same way at the beginning of the film. And I think his name, I have to double check the character's name. His name is Terry. So again, Tyree Nichols. They cloned Tyrone with Jamie Foxx, which has a lot of these same elements to it. the resurrection theme, but the name has a great deal of significance, essentially to the Masonic death resurrection story of Hiram Abiff. That's what we've been seeing here. It's about a martyr's death. And I think even the name Trayvon, like Trayvon Martin Trey, it's anagrammatically consistent throughout. And as we have been following this. What's up, Pippi Langstroth? Thank you for joining. We're just talking about the psyops of the day. So again, if you support this one but not this one, your problem is clear. So now you have another Luigi character. And these are all characters who are perceived by the left as on the right side of history, fighting against the empire, the bad system, fighting against Trump and MAGA-ism. But they're basically heroes. And this is all the stuff that we had foreshadowed for us in The Madness on Netflix, where the leftists would be driven to the point of becoming somewhat paramilitary. In The Madness, you had the Antifa with Uzis in response to the Musk-esque character. So that's in Virginia. High school athlete shot dead after a TikTok door prank goes wrong at Virginia home. Evidence shows the teens were in the backyard attempting to break in at 3 a.m. Neighbors reported prior break-ins that night, and the homeowner believed it was a burglary leading to the shooting. So there's a dispute here. Were 18-year-olds at 3 a.m. innocently knocking on the door playing a prank, or were they part of a string of robberies? Well, whatever the case, the media reportage has made them into innocent victims of a homeowner with a gun who murdered them in cold blood without reason. But the word on X is that Tyler Butler was justified. But the headlines, it makes the point for the caller. With the commenter that I just played that uploaded that video. The point here is that the public is going to perceive this as an injustice. So here's an Epstein survivor, Juliet Bryant, calling out James O'Keefe, questioning why he portrayed himself as a victim when the actual victims are mysteriously ending up dead. She said the, quote, bombshell information O'Keefe released was already known to the public. You were not disappointed in O'Keefe's nothing burger if you were listening to Infinite Plane Radio, because I told you it was going to be a nothing burger. Some video footage is in, and it shows the police lied, and Rodney Hinton's son did not point a gun. And he was shot in the back. What do you think now?
It's not turned around. That's when he got shot in the back 4 times, killing him.
So that's 4. There are 4 psyops right now that are perfectly dividing the public and getting the people on X to take sides, and they each want to fund their side. Lean Dion says, all these race events while Ye is praising Hitler. Yeah, Ye has this new song out where he has like 15 blacks dressed like Vikings and animal skins or something, and they're all chanting Hail Hitler, I think. And then I think at the end you actually hear Hitler. I see people saying he pushed the Overton window. This is art. He's a genius. And I'm just thinking that he's overplayed the shock value card so many times that it's not even getting a rise out of anybody. And it must be frustrating that you can't continue to shock people in the same way again and again. Eventually the spell wears off. I was suggesting, if I was his talent agent, I would say, hey, Ye, marching around with Bianca, your wife, naked is not shocking. You should be naked on a leash, and she should be walking you around. And that's kind of how I depicted him in South Pole. And then he had the balloon over his head because he was inhaling helium. That would be art. That would be shocking. That would get some attention. Leonard says, Ye worshiping Hitler and confessing to give his male cousin. Yeah, that was inappropriate. I don't know who his target audience is, but he went from Jesus walks to I did this horrible thing with my relative. I mean, I don't know where. Again, the shock is not even working. Like, I don't really see it getting the attention that it would have garnered just a few years ago. I mean, this would have been a big deal. I mean, Ye has put some stuff out there that would really, I think, define anybody as, extreme, becoming very vulnerable, releasing something so personal. But the way he did it, it's just like, it's just, it gets drowned out. All right, let's move on. We've got a new pope, by the way. What's the deal with the new pope? His name is Pope Leo. I think there might be something with this one. I think they're calling him a woke pope, is what I'm seeing. A woke pope. But they said the same thing about Pope Francis. Somebody says here, IPS giving Ye tips. Yeah, let's see if he does it. I don't think he would. Yesterday, we were talking to Jurassic Liars about this, about the West Coast, about Washington and where this attack is going to happen, and how it happens to look like Elvis in profile, looking towards the ocean. So I put that map out to Grok, and I said, hey, can you go ahead and juxtapose this with the profile of Elvis? I'm looking for a match. And you can certainly see Elvis. And it's one of these things you can't unsee it. Once you see Elvis in the contours of Washington State, you will not be able to unsee it. Just like you can't unsee the fact that Montana looks like Joe Biden sniffing Idaho. Like, that one is bizarre. That one really struck me as just like uncanny. How? I can't explain this one. This might actually be a synchronicity and not something planned by man. This might be the universe speaking to us. Steve says he's a woke pope, anti-gun, pro-open borders. I was talking to someone about this in Discord the other day, but it seems like, yeah, this is kind of more in line with Catholicism anyway. Like, I see people like Candace Owens becoming Catholic. Who's the other guy? Nick Fuentes. Who, again, Nick Fuentes is the basis for David Duke in that Spike Lee film, Black Klansman. I just checked out. It's ridiculous. I'm watching this movie from 5 years ago, and it's got a young David Duke with a thick mustache. It's a Spike Lee Black Klansman about this undercover cop. Anyway, 5 years after that movie comes out, Nick Fuentes grows out his mustache and looks just like him. But there's a scene where David Duke and the Klan are sharing wine, and they're all basically toasting to America first. America first. Yeah, I will certainly open up phones. Let me put a link here. I have an invite link in the chat, and then if somebody wants to call in, sure. My main focus today has been these 4 consecutive psyops that are left, right, black, white polarity, connects with the Met Gala, as I was saying, this whole civil rights wardrobe thing, Kamala Harris with the black and the white. And when we're talking about this foosball figure in Fallout, there's a Kamala Harris representative, Betty Pearson, who's responsible for the massacre and the theft of the election. And let's not forget, the movie Civil War has Trump in office, and they have Kamala take him out. Now, it's not that blatant, but almost. Like, nobody can miss that. Robert Provost becomes the first American pope and will be known as Pope Leo the 14th. So this is him. And then out comes all these worried comments about Revelation and stuff. First American Pope, one world currency may come, which is an Antichrist reign. If the reign arrives, this is the end time, and we need to be super alert. I thought Trump was the Antichrist. And then there's this other guy they say is the Antichrist. He's got a TikTok channel. There are so many people who want that title. But this is coming out now. This popophobia. But the real pope, as far as I'm concerned, is Elon Musk. I think the papacy is largely just a relic. It's symbolic, but the new papacy, it's the space popes. Heaven is the new, well, space is the new heaven. And the obelisks of the old order are now rockets, but it's quite literally the same thing. And we're moving into the age of Mars, a new god. We're phasing out the god of the Pope, the vicar of Christ concept that he is the Pope incarnate. But no, we're moving into a new system. So they're phasing that out. The new god is Mars. We're all going to be Martians. Mars, Horus. You can see the New Age movement's own literature on this. It's there. It's actually already happening. We're living in it. Okay, I posted a link. You can jump into StreamYard if you choose. A little more information on this. Tyler Butler, 27, is charged with second-degree murder, accused of shooting at 3 teenagers who were behind the home. So that's not knock-knock if they're behind your house, knocking on your back door. Not at all. Says the backstory, the shooting happened at 3 a.m. on Saturday, May 3rd. So you have the Butler, Tyler, 33, seems a little hoaxy to me. Leo says the Black Pope didn't die, so it's business as usual. Mount Crushmore says, thankfully, the Holy See has placed the Lucifer device on Mount Graham. Yeah, they have a telescope named Lucifer. I've been doing some reading into John Dee. I found a really good book. If anybody wants to get the link, I'll post it. I found it on Archives. It's a book on his system of magic, but it describes, how he communicated with what he believed were intelligences. He didn't think the stars were balls of gas like we do today, but he used the telescope nonetheless as a navigational device. He was an advisor on the English voyages of exploration, but in a very real way, he believed that by incorporating the telescope into their rituals, they were in fact communicating, they believed, with angels or something like that. So the Vatican having a telescope, I wonder, is it really for scoping out distant exoplanets, future destinations for mankind? Or are they involved in some kind of black magic, summoning spirits, that kind of thing? And John Dee had a system of magic that was based on communicating with entities through a scrying mirror, which looks just like your iPhone. And the way they do it, and I don't suggest you do this, but you know, like a circle, hexagram, write the names of the demons you want to summon, and then you put the triangle of summoning, and outside the triangle you have your black mirror. And supposedly they're able to summon these things into a visible appearance. And he got the black mirror from some I think it was a group in Mexico, some religious practice in Mexico that involves a black mirror. So there's a tradition to it. And I've seen other examples of the use of black mirror in black magic. And if you haven't seen the series Black Mirror, I recommend it, although I would skip the first episode because it's gross, but most of it's very thought-provoking and relevant to the world that we now inhabit. What's up, Leo friend?
Hey, Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Fantastic. So I haven't been paying attention to a lot of the racial crimes that you've been covering on tonight's episode, which is great because that's how I get filled in on them, by watching your deprogram of them, because I've been a little busy. But with regards to the Pope, there is quite a bit to unpack there, with him being the first American Pope from Chicago, no less. And Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, most famous player from that. Calcified Lies, actually, his most recent video really blew me away by some of his research, because Sinners starred Michael B. Jordan in it, right? Now, Michael Jordan was actually, in 2001, on September 11th, going to announce that he was going to get back into the NBA on September 11th. but then he didn't, obviously, because of the magic trick that transpired on that day. But it was in the headlines leading up to 9/11 that Michael Jordan was about to make his announcement, his return to basketball, and it was in the subconscious minds of everyone. Now with Sinners, again, the name Michael Jordan is in the minds of everyone, and this new pope is from Chicago. So just very, very subtle subconscious references that are being planted in the entire media ecosystem from people who are fans of sports, people who are watching the Pope's election, and it plays into him being an American Pope, plays perfectly into the Metascript narrative of America being the new Rome or the fall of Rome. That's we've been seeing in the new Gladiator film, Megalopolis, and just in general, right? So those are just some of the thoughts that came to my mind. And you brought up that Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes are also Catholic. Prominently, they wear it on their sleeves, and they're made to fail, in a sense. That's why I have this view that Catholicism, the West, America as Rome, is ultimately heading towards a collapse to be rebuilt.
Fascinating take, and I didn't think about that, but you're right. An American Pope does have that particular significance to it. And Megalopolis, you mentioned. Megalopolis, you have Caesar, Catalina. Of course, we're talking about the Roman Empire. And the activists are saying, make Rome great again. So there's no mistake that the movie is about Maga and Magalon, or Megalon is what they called it. But all we're waiting for is the next 9/11 event so Caesar can unite the world. But it happens after his head wound that he survives. So has that already happened? That's my question. What do you think?
With the ear event, that could have, the thing is, it wasn't quite the right eye that we've been talking about for so long, but it is interesting that in Megalopolis, it happens in reverse, right? The satellite crashes into New York City and the whole cityscape is destroyed. And then Caesar Catalina, in a cloud, which I think kind of represents the internet, preaches we need a great debate about the future. The youth really needs to lead out, because the old elderly, the old Trumps of the world and stuff, they can't, that's why I think JD Vance might be a key player in the future, especially because of his age. He's so young. And I've been seeing even some of Nick Fuentes' ilk posting weird memes where they're saying like Hyde Vance. I don't know if you know who Sam Hyde is. He's a very popular comedian in that kind of circle for disenfranchised young men. So like people are just really just sick of the boomer hate narrative. That's another very popular cultural move, that boomers, they don't get technology, they don't get the future. We really need a younger person to lead the future. But I was going to say
on Sam Hyde really quick. For people who don't know who Sam Hyde is, he's a comedian, but people are often throwing his image in whenever there's a mass shooting. They're like, oh, he did it. This is the shooter. And I didn't know who he was. So after the Christchurch shooting, I see this image of the shooter in court, and he's doing the AOK sign, which is a signal to the right-wing types. And I don't see that so much anymore, but, the 666 AOK hand sign. And so I have this documentary on the Christchurch shooting massacre. And when I show the scene where it's the shooter, I have Sam Hyde. And I didn't know it wasn't Brenton Tarrant. I thought that was him, because I was fooled by Sam Hyde. It's still there, but somebody corrected me. But anyway, that's how I know who he is. He's a comedian. And yeah, definitely on the right side. But
it's funny. Before my channel got banned, I actually did a little expose during one of my streams about him. He is absolutely in the club. I don't know at what level. I don't know how high up in the hierarchy, but there are two pieces of evidence I pointed to clearly indicate that he's in the club. On the day of January 6th, his comedy group $1 Billion Extreme, or his channel Hyde Wars, they uploaded a Civil War comedy sketch where they stormed the Access building on the same day of January 6th. Was it 2021? Was that the day it occurred? The same day. And now you could argue, well, hey, it was just culturally prescient. People knew about the Stop the Steal rally. I disagree. It was released concurrently as the internet was being bombarded with the live footage of Ashley Babbitt getting shot and all these people going through January 6th. Simultaneously on his channel is released a comedy skit where they're basically storming a different government building. That's one point. The other point is there's a skit that he released called Knife School from several years ago that I mentioned on mindwar.page in an article titled An Infuriating Enigma that deconstructs the Luigi Mangione psyop and his character. And in this skit that Sam Hyde and Charles Carroll had done several years ago, this skit called Knife School, it is very clearly a reference to the killing of the CEO Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione. Though they don't use guns, it's Knife School. It's a parody video of like knife training, but there's a scene where it cuts to Sam Hyde where he does a finger point gesture to the audience. He's posing as CEO. As a CEO, he says, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me when I'm walking home late at night. Don't kill me." And he points to a porta potty that has a United logo on it. And this skit came out several years ago. In fact, kind of like how you pointed out with Machete when you went to the comments and everyone went, "Oh my, this was Trump's POV at Butler." If you go to that skit there and sort comments by newest, you will see everyone making Luigi Mangione jokes and saying like, "Oh my goodness, like this is exactly that." So that's my take on Sam Hyde.
Okay, I need that link then. I need that article. I'll have to go to your site because this is another phenomenon here where we're noticing predictive programming, and after the event happens, swarms of people go to that content and talk about it. I remember that one on Butler, like, this was Trump's perspective 30 minutes ago. So this flies in the face of those who say that predictive programming's not a thing. People don't notice. Yeah, they absolutely notice. This is mind control, MK Ultra, where they embed ideas to tap into later through association. They create your frame of reference. And that is a fascinating thing where somebody sees something on TV and they're like, wait, this happened in that movie exactly like it. And you see a bunch of people spontaneously noticing. Again, this is just more, I think, suggestion that we're looking at what I consider to be standard operating procedure, systemic fakery.
And, I was a fan of Sam Hyde, his early $1 Million Extreme content, some of his early stuff. He is very funny. But this is just a intuition or my thought is I think like when you get big enough, that's when a deal is made and then you get into the club. There's like a ceiling for how people are naturally very talented, very good, but you can't break through this level until you enter the world stage. And then when you make a deal and you enter the world stage, then you are promulgated everywhere. I mean, the Sam Hyde's the latest shooter. That meme has been on Twitter for so long. Anytime there was a school shooting, anytime people would make a joke with Sam Hyde being the suspected shooter, which again makes the idea of it being fake seem like a joke, seem like something you shouldn't take seriously.
How many times have we seen right-leaning comedians taking the conspiracy ball and running with it and then basically fumbling it? That's a common theme with these conspiracy theorists who make these conspiracies annoying. They make the whole field attached to ideas that we don't really, it's like, we're not doing this for shock value. We're not doing this for clicks. We're looking at inconsistencies in the worldview as presented by media and the effects that it has on people because we're looking at ideological warfare. And then you have these clowns who take these conspiracies as a way to get attention, it seems like, and they say these outlandish things. And after a while, it ceases to have an effect. Like, we're desensitized. I think society's desensitized against conspiracies as they're desensitized against anything that Ye does.
Absolutely. And it's done through entertainment. It's done through, Sam Hyde is just, to make it better, we're going to tie it back. He also had released a skit. I think it was like Sam Hyde, QAnon or something. It was something where he made a parody of boomers who are into QAnon with a cameo by Nick Fuentes. And he called Nick Fuentes the next Tucker Carlson. And I remember when I first saw that video, I was like, wait a minute, this is not organic. I was like, nope. Sam is funnier than this, and it looked phoned in. Why is he doing this promo? Why is he cutting a wrestling promo for Nick Fuentes? It was the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes is 100% Nick Fed. Nick Fed is what they call him on Twitter. He's definitely Fed. He has to be. Charlottesville. Spike Lee did a movie about him, making him the new David Duke. The slogan, America First, Jews will not replace us, comes from Nick Fuentes. He was Ye's campaign manager, went to Ye at the White House with Trump, making them all look crazy. And I think all around you can connect Fuentes to Ollie Alexander, who's part of that grooming circle in the conservative movement where they bring in young conservatives, blackmail them by getting them to essentially compromise themselves through photos and video, and then they bring them into the fold. So everybody who's in that clique has crossed a certain line, in my opinion. None of them are organic. And Nick Fuentes is obviously a parody of extremism. And I can understand why people listen to him. He's entertaining. He's good at what he does. But his opinions and the like are not even authentically his, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's really entertaining just as much as I think Alex Jones is very entertaining. On my streams, I used to have compilation clips of some of their greatest hits. They said some real bangers. Alex Jones talking about how he will eat your ass when they run out of food. And I was like, okay, like what drove you? What compelled you to say that? Oh, you're script writers. Okay. But
wait, Fuentes was just on InfoWars like just a couple weeks ago. And Alex Jones came out with a stuffed frog and was like making funny voices. And I mean, Alex Jones is actually a comedian, in my opinion. And he does have to do this hyping thing with these conspiracies to the point where it's unlistenable. And I think that's by design. Imagine you're trying to wake somebody up and like, hey, mainstream media is not real. You got to check this stuff out. And you play it for somebody and they hear pills for, male vitality pills. Then you hear all these really just, I would say kind of doomy talking points delivered with extreme histrionics. And I think it's off-putting by design.
It's made to ridicule anyone who's questioning, what might be MSM, and they're put in the MSM plus box, which is of course made to fail. And it's again, you talk about Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones. Yeah, wasn't Ye, Nick Fuentes, and Alex Jones in a triptych interview conversation where Ye had a black hood, kind of going off his black black skinhead music video, but in it he was holding a Bible while basically saying, "Oh, Adolf Hitler, he's a great guy," subconsciously planting the idea that any criticism of Israel from the Bible, you basically have to be insane, as Nick Fuentes, or you have to be a Nazi, basically, if you use the Bible to say, wait a minute, like the political state of Israel isn't biblical. You're a Nazi, because that's insane. Everyone, any good Christian knows that that's what the Bible says.
Isn't it interesting that Ye comes out with this Hail Hitler video where he's got 15 blacks chanting Hail Hitler, and you can't get any white musicians to do this, and nor would they get platformed on that level. So he almost seems like a psyop in the sense that they're diffusing something, like from the very beginning with his black skinhead thing, and then his association with White Lives Matter and Candace Owens. It's like, wait, Candace Owens seems to be chosen specifically because she can say things that, if said by a white male, would just be derided as sexist and racist. But because she's a black female, she can say these things. So I see them playing games with their propaganda vectors, which might be part of diluting the message, maybe even discrediting it or diffusing it.
Yeah, it is. It's strange how consistent that theming is. And I almost think it plays into like the Masonic checkerboard, like the black and white, just swapping it, pulling a quick one on you. It's like, whoa, have you ever seen a black person wearing I think back to the Dave Chappelle skit where he infiltrated the KKK and took off his hood, which I thought was hilarious at that young age when I first saw it.
Well, that's the story of Black Klansman by Spike Lee. I just watched it on Amazon. And the whole point of the movie is that, you do have this undercover officer who's black joining the KKK, but since he can't show up in person, they send in the character played by Adam Driver. And this is the one where they meet with the Nick Fuentes-esque David Duke. But having watched that, it was 100% concurrent with the Charlottesville. And it shows you that Nick Fuentes is a world stage character. If you're just a regular citizen, you're not going to be the star of a Netflix movie in one of the characters, like directly reflected in a Netflix character. And this is consistently happening. That's why I think that Laura Loomer's questionable. It's like Loomer is in the madness as Laura Jennings, and she gets killed for trying to expose a CEO's election interference. And the fact that she's not commenting on that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and I wrote that article on Spike Lee. I hate to, push my own work, but mindwar.page, the two articles, if anyone's watching, you want to look up, are An Infuriating Enigma and Spike Lee Metascript Breakdown. I wrote that back in November, and when I saw that scene with the young David Duke, who is a one-to-one matching. If you go to the website, you can see the screenshot comparisons of the scene and how Nick Fuentes looked at how he was dressed and how his facial hair was on America First at the time. It's a one-to-one matching. And the David Duke character even says America First. And they use real news footage of the Charlottesville rally at the end of the film. It's so synchronized with news pundit talking heads that you might just say, oh, this is, just prescient cultural commentary. Am I right?
Right, exactly. It's just prescient. And Spike Lee, by the way, I was talking about the Met Gala and the theme of it all being civil rights. And I talked about Colin Kaepernick was there and his connection with the Blackout Bowl, kneeling on the flag, and then his beef with Trump. But there's pictures of Colin Kaepernick hanging out with Spike Lee because Spike Lee's doing a documentary on his life. And he's always wearing a 1619 on his beanie. So you have a lot of connections between the 1619 concept, as we've been talking about, this 1619 versus 1776, and Spike Lee. And now we have it, and it's obviously been attached to Colin Kaepernick. But Spike Lee is a metascriptor. And if I had to credit anybody with having directed the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd thing, I'm thinking Spike Lee, maybe even Jordan Peele. But I'm thinking for sure Spike Lee has been likely the director for a lot of these Black Lives Matter martyrs that they've created. Michael Brown, for example, I think it's another Spike Lee production.
Yeah, and it reminds me, I really got to write an article about what Synchro Morpheus had found regarding the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely, Jordan Peele connection. I really think he did direct the Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny subway incident, because the visual similarities between the character in Get Out and there is just, it's undeniable visually. Some of the screenshots Synchro Morpheus had collected, you can see the screenshots from the film and then the news release photos, and the exact scene played out in the film beforehand, several years before.
For people don't know, Get Out by Jordan Peele has characters that look like one of the characters looks just like Jordan Neely when he's in his Michael Jackson getup. I mean, it looks just like him. But not only do you have these visual similarities, but Jordan Peele says he made his movie Nope after watching the George Floyd spectacle. Well, the Jordan Neely death was a George Floyd spectacle. You had the guy choking the other guy, the black and the white, the rich versus the poor. So you had the same exact story, but the person recording it was some independent filmmaker, the guy who was on the subway. And what Synchro Morpheus had pointed out is that in Nope, it's all seen through the viewfinder, through the perspective of an independent filmmaker checking out the spectacle. So you even have that connection between the persons filming these spectacles, the UFO in his movie, and then, of course, on the subway, the killing. And then one other point, Jordan Peele's movie Get Out has the lacrosse playing Daniel Penny lookalike who strangles the black character. I mean, these overlaps are incredible. So when I see this new character, Tyler Butler, killing a white lacrosse player, I'm like, okay, this is fitting a pattern here.
Yeah, and what lacrosse being tied to rich, white, upper class sport, that's also an incredible subconscious association. Why we see this recurring imagery, because Daniel Penny was a lacrosse player. That was in the news that Synchro Morpheus had also mentioned, and the character who chokes out, the character in Get Out, it was a lacrosse player as well. So it's these themes are not limited to films. What it is our news events are also films, in a sense that instead of being filmed for Hollywood theaters, it's filmed for our TV screens by news.
Yes, and so they use the same symbols and ideas. Now the white kid playing lacrosse is representative of the elite, the rich, the privileged, and then he's getting a treatment by the police that you can consider to be privileged because he's breaking into this guy's house and he gets killed, but he's white, so he was just doing a prank, and the homeowner is a murderer, when we all know that if it were three black teens breaking into a white man's house and he shot one, it would have been self-defense, unquestioned. But the facts here support the idea of an unfair system. And this is what's being consistently reiterated with all these latest 4 events. And Shiloh Hendricks making $500,000, dropping a slur. These things are piling up. So we have a pretty a psyop rich environment. I mean, 4 back-to-back racial psyops. And on top of this, Tucker Carlson talking about his prophecy, his prediction that there's going to be a false flag where the Patriot Front or the Klan gets shot up by BLM. Like, that's a pretty specific type of prediction to make in this climate.
Yeah, right. What a curious thing to say. He's just like, I have a prediction. There's probably going to be, it's like, wait, what? Where did that come from? Oh, I guess maybe, the universe. It was a sync. It was a synchronistic, prophecy he got from the universe. It must have been. Couldn't be a part of the metascript.
Maybe the alien whispered it in his ear while it was scratching his back.
While it was scratching him. It gave him that nightmare. We still haven't seen those scratch marks, though. I still love that video. That was a regular clip I used to show on my streams before it got banned. It's hilarious. But that meme you had shown of Luigi Mangione versus this recent incident, and it says, like, if you support this but not this, like, here's the real problem. That meme perfectly encapsulates just the echo chamber of a system. As both of these events have very questionable, sus, hoax elements to them, and yet they're both playing off each other in the public consciousness. And this is how liars work. They build off of past lies. They reference other lies as if it's crystallized reality. This is why Jordan Peele, doesn't surprise me at all that he said he was inspired by the George Floyd spectacle. Doesn't surprise me at all that Osgood Perkins, the director of The Monkey, reinforced as my mother died in one of the planes on 9/11. They keep referring to these lies as if they are just accepted reality that cannot be, even looked at.
And then we're talking about patterns here. We have the twin thing. So the stabbing of the twin really stood out to me. And then Sinners is about a twin, and you have one twin bleeding to death in the other's arm, just like in the movie. It happens in real life. And then we have the twins of the head of the WEF and the head of the Vatican stepping off the world stage at 88 on the same day. Then you have these twins, the Sync sisters, the twins from Australia that were on the news who witnessed a carjacking, and they were giving their testimony in sync with each other. So, like, this idea of twins was consistently being thrown up. And then I saw this interview about Sinners where they compared it to Jordan Peele's movies. And they said Jordan Peele has consistently made use of the doppelganger, the twin, the other, the dark half. So there's a theme here that also pertains to this this idea of the suppressed dark side. So there's a lot of consistent themes here, but the twin thing has been repeatedly popping up. And again, Mario, Luigi are twins. That's another element to this that someone brought up to me. This, again, consistent patterns across multiple psyops that relate to the movies.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize that, like, interviews directors, actors give with these media outlets, you think like, oh, E or Empire, and so, oh, these are entertainment outlets. When they are speaking, they're still contributing to the metascript because they're in the club. So when they say these kinds of things, or like when Sinners is compared to Jordan Peele's work, it's not a coincidence. It's more than just the thematic similarities between the films. It's because they want people to think about Jordan Peele's movies and also have that on the mind as we see these kind of events play out on the world stage.
Yes. And I think, for example, Joker 2, I don't know if you watched it, but the whole scene with the courthouse and building this this idea of this hero that has so many fans that they dress up like him and they wait outside the courthouse. That is exactly what happened with Luigi Mangione. Like, he became a real life Joker. And it's notable too that the killing of the CEO had all these other elements that connect with Trump, because it was outside the Hilton where Trump accepted his candidacy, a 47-story building, CEO Trump 47. We found a lot there to make this pretty strong parallel. And then ever since, of course, Luigi, we've had nonstop calls for the death of Elon Musk. And again, now, so we had the stuff against CEOs, but now these last 4 events are making people look at the cops and the system in the same way. So you're a hero if you're killing CEOs or if you're killing cops that defend the system.
And Cope Aesthetic had said something interesting in the chat earlier on. Let me see if I could find it, where it says Italian Pope means it was like something. it's like a lot of Italian stuff is going on in the media, and it really struck me when I watched the 2022 Batman, the one that had Paul Dano and Robert Pattinson, that one with the Riddler. And in my article about An Infuriating Enigma, I go over that. I was just shocked by like how Carmine Falcone and like all the, it was just like this Italian underworld in the underbelly of Gotham, and the Riddler wanted to expose all the corruption that was there. And I drew the parallel, of course, to Luigi Mangione leaving clues on his bullet shells, very similar to the Riddler leaving calling cards at his murders in the film. The article really goes into it, but it's very bizarre. And when you bring up Elon Musk, we talked about that SNL skit with...
Well, he was Wario. He was Wario, and Luigi tries to kill him with a red turtle shell. So you got Wario, CEO, Musk, and Luigi, and that was in Saturday Night Live. Yeah, that's right.
And I thought of another connection later on. The trial that SNL skit, in the context it was taken of, is that Mario was dead. Well, Pope Francis, his real name was Jorge Mario Bergoglio. So he's already dead. Mario is dead. And now Luigi is being brought up in court right now. So it's just these subconscious connections are there on purpose.
Well, there's another one. You mentioned Riddler being connected with Luigi. And the actor Dave Franco is the one that they compared his looks to Luigi. And he has said that ever since the Luigi shooting, he has been inundated, not just by his agents, but by all his friends, and everybody tells him, you have to play Luigi in a real life biopic. So Dave Franco has talked about this Luigi connection, but then it gets even more interesting because I think it was Cubstar had pointed this out, that Dave Franco actually played the Riddler
in the animated show Young Justice. Yeah.
Listen to this. Expect Dave Franco to star in Monsters, the Luigi Mangione story. So there's going to be a potential. Look, fans want Dave Franco to play Luigi Mangione in potential TV series. So anyway, this connection has been made, and the actor is also known for being the voice of the Riddler. And the Riddler connections connect to, well, also Thomas Crooks, who looks just like the Riddler. And as we've pointed out before, at the moment of silence 84 days later, they played the song Ave Maria, which is what the Riddler was singing in the movie when Batman was trying to figure out what he had done.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of like the cinematic universe overlapping with the news. It's like, yeah, this is like a news universe, a fictional universe that has rules and self-references and cameos of other existing characters in this fictional universe. That's why they constantly reference each other. It's why school shooters, in their manifestos, they reference other hoax shootings as if it inspired them. It's all self-referential, and it might look ridiculous to people who don't know about the world stage, us talking about these things, because to them, these are organic, real events, right? We're just practicing apophenia. Oh, wow, we're crazy if we're making these, but it's like, no, it's fiction. So we're analyzing it like art.
They do callbacks. This is how, it's just literature. We're watching a script. The stage has a script, the meta script. And I first picked up on this when Dylan Storm Roof came out. It's like, oh, he's been radicalized on Stormfront, which is a racist thing online. The name Dylan, well, Dylan Shooter, you think Dylan Klebold, Dylan and Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold from Littleton. So I was noticing that they build in associations between other shooters. So this character, Rodney Hinton Jr., as I pointed out earlier, people have already said, if it turns out that he was justified in taking out a cop in retaliation for his son's death, then he's like Rodney King. That this will, in other words, Rodney King precipitated what? The LA riots. And that's the attitude that I'm seeing being built up with this particular event. And last year, at the beginning of the year, you had the Tyree Nichols being beaten, and then he dies in custody. And that was compared to Rodney King's beating, and it looked just like the Rodney King beating. And on top of that, you had Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter showed up at the protests for the police there. And then they had his eulogy at Mason Temple, where MLK Jr. gave his final speech. So you had this Rodney King, Martin Luther King Jr. all being correlated with that particular event. And the name, of course, Tyree stands out. But none of this is coincidental. This is also the 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination when Trump was on trial on 4/4 when they were filming Joker 2. And of course, people thought the crowd was there for Trump. But yeah, they have correlated these various psyops to reference other psyops, and they create a like almost like a conspiracy theory. You know how you attach various things, but they create a narrative structure that if you get one thread and you see this thread, it all builds up something that appears to have substance.
Yeah, and it must be stressed that we're not even the ones making the connections. Several news outlet noted that the filming of Joker 2 was running concurrently with Trump's trial in Manhattan. Like other news outlets pointed out that people thought that the people outside the courtroom were for Trump, but it was actually for Joker 2. Other news outlets commented on that. So when people say like, why are you drawing these parallels? I'm like, I didn't draw the parallel. Check out this news article. It's like they want you to see these connections, but not have the off-world stage perspective. They want people just to go, wow, that's a eerie coincidence, and move on. Don't think about it too much.
They only notice it when it's completely obvious, and then they dismiss it. It reminds me of in Westworld. So in Westworld, you have these people who are in a simulation, and every day their minds are reset, so they don't remember what happened the day before. So they're trapped in this realm, Westworld. And anytime they see something that contradicts their worldview, they have this programmed response. So they're in this Western, and let's say they see a modern phone device. Their programmed response would be, if you were to show it to them, that doesn't look like anything to me. They say, that doesn't look like anything to me anytime they see something that contradicts their worldview. And that's how when somebody sees a connection, when we point out a connection, they go into this Westworld synth mode where they're like, that doesn't look like anything to me.
It's just do you believe in coincidences is what I've also been told. And it's like, yeah, in real life, but what's on your screen isn't real life. It's like coincidences and random chance happens in your everyday experience. But what we are talking about are events on the screen, which are filtered through news production companies, literal Hollywood directors, movies. It's like that's not reality, what you see reported on in the news or in a Hollywood film. But people are reality impaired, where they equate their real life experience, which does have random chance and coincidences, with the news that is being reported to them. And it's I hate to bring the topic back. It was like you were talking about the Rodney King beating, and Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely. An independent filmmaker was the one who recorded the Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely. Well, speaking of Rodney King, remember, it was George Holliday. It was an amateur cameraman who happened to be there when they were filming the bar scene in the intro to Terminator 2. He happened to record that scene where Arnie beat up the guys, and stole the motorcycle. He was like, yeah, he recorded that. On the same tape, he also happened to record the Rodney King beating. Wow.
And it was 1 minute and 19 seconds of footage. And anybody in the chat care to guess how many times was Rodney King hit with a baton?
It's appeared already in tonight's stream, right? 33, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be, right? It has to be. And this is, of course, James Cameron's Terminator 2. Then he did Titanic, which foreshadows the Twin Towers when the Titanic breaks in two and sinks, has jumpers. Then on 9/11, he's at the site of the sunken Titanic. Anybody care to guess how many times James Cameron visited the sunken Titanic? Exactly, 33. Twin Towers were 33 years old. He has a $33 million mansion. I mean, it's just consistent. But what is interesting to me here is the consistency has been going on with these same numbers as far back as we look. And with this latest one, you have the cop that Rodney Hinton killed served 33 years, just retired, and then he gets killed. The other guy shoots a teenager, 3 teenagers, 3 a.m. They keep throwing the same numbers out in the same exact contexts. It's hoax code or something.
Yeah, and I really do take your position that it could be some form of coding for the initiates to see, okay, this is a part of the system. Because they're not, sometimes it's very overt. They put it in the headline. Excuse me. Sometimes they put it in the headline. But other times, like this recent event, you have to look up, they were 33 years as a police officer before. Like you have to like really look and then find it. But yeah, it's certainly some kind of code that could be used by Metascript directors, other Metascripters to see in the know without them having to attend a meeting. If they have the code, they can see it.
I think so too. And because we have to remember too that we have been looking at it with this perspective as insiders. That's why I named the tabloid the Insider. It's a, it's a way of referencing the fact that we are taking an insider's perspective on things. And if we were insiders, we would know what these codes mean. And if we operate on that premise, are we in the know consistently? And I would say yes, because by observing these patterns and recognizing them, at no point are we ever falling under the illusion that what we're seeing can be trusted. So I would say that that is at least part of its utility.
Yeah, and I will say, even as much flack as I get from my online friends, talking about this kind of stuff, one of them did approach me after Ye released his new music video, and he said, I now understand what you're talking about. I see it now. Because he thought it was insane, the stuff I talked about with Austin Metcalf. He's like, no way, that's ridiculous. But then as it's just event after event with the Shiloh Hendrix and now the Ye music video, he's like, this is synchronized. This is not organic. This doesn't just happen as we approach summer. The timing of it is too inorganic. It's not real.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking now we're getting close to something big here. Last night we were talking about the earthquake drills in Seattle that they do on October 16th at 10:16 a.m. for some reason. But we're approaching that particular scenario, which involves fallout, EMP, blackouts. There's movies that correlate with it. And then you got Marilyn Manson on tour, and he just released a cover of Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. And someone had pointed this out, like, you think there's something to it? Well, everything that I'm seeing in entertainment is about airborne toxins. We have to lock down because the air, in other words, fallout is the most likely situation. There's no way they're repeating the virus thing. They use that to condition us for lockdowns and to prepare us for the advent of the mind virus, which they've given us in the last few years, which they're going to use as a basis for censorship. But we have been acclimated to the idea of locking down, masking up. And so now it seems to me that we're ready for fallout. When they do it, we know how to react.
Yeah, and to go a step further, it's like I'm of the opinion whatever this fallout will be caused by, whether it be I'm highly pointing to a domestic right-wing terrorist attack. We can make these kind of claims or predictions because of how consistent the programming has been. It would play right along with the Turner Diaries, the Oklahoma City bombing. We've already seen the left act a little crazy with the Tesla, protests and the Tesla car keying and stuff. Right. So people are like, oh, the left, they're crazy. Wait for the other side to have its controlled demolition. Like the right is going to look even more insane than they already do with some kind of event. And to be against it, it'll be just like the lockdowns, because anti-vax is a very right-wing position. You have to be very conservative to be anti-vax.
Yes. There's a pretty consistent message here, and I think this Rodney Hinton could be a game changer if you've been looking at the public's reaction. So I'm looking at, like, people don't pay attention to the news because they say it's bad news or it's fake. I pay attention because I want to know what people believe and what they're thinking, where their heads are at, not because I'm trying to be informed by it, because I know what its purpose is. It's propaganda. And by studying the effects of it on X, you can see, well, the leftist position is that Hinton's a hero, Luigi's a hero, Shiloh Hendrix is someone who should be investigated for having committed a hate crime. But the consistent message here is systemic racism. Now it's in the open. We saw it all on X. We saw it on the crowdfunding sites. And now you have obvious examples of the police and their bias, allowing them to kill an 18-year-old and arrest a guy defending his house legitimately because of their skin color. So they've manufactured a great deal of outrage. It looks like a powder keg.
Yeah, and last thing before I go, with 1619 versus 1776, I almost see them as the two towers, which were destroyed and synthesized into the one World Trade Center. And those two views will be destroyed and synthesized into something else. I won't be saying here what I think that is, but you may have gotten hints from our previous conversations.
I think you're right. Because the 1619, 1776 exemplify the poles the sides of the spectrum, but they're exemplified in Barack Obama and Donald Trump, white and black. And this whole thing is about the Hegelian dialectic and the synthesis, where you get the result of merging the two, and the two towers becoming one. That has been a consistent part of the symbolism. Some of you even said 2001 Space Odyssey is about the two into one, the consistent symbolism of the sun and the moon combining, and now you have the one world tower. I think you might be onto something here, where the reckoning between these two worldviews is going to end up resulting in the necessity for what we saw at the end of Megalopolis. The Pledge of Allegiance to America becomes the Pledge of Allegiance for all of humanity. They get rid of America. We have a one world system.
Yep, it's we need a great debate about the future, something that Adam Driver's character had said. And yeah, it's like with these two poles, you're ping-ponged between the two, back and forth, and you're like, this one's crazy, they're crazy. Ping-ponged enough until they're both destroyed. And out of the ashes comes a new, more appealing middle ground that the whole world will be kind of attracted to. But if you're in the off-world stage perspective, you just look at both those poles and start seeing the magnetic, the B fields around them that are pulling people in.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for the call. And yeah, mindwar.page, I have you marked on autohoax.com. And I actually went to go see, or I watched Black Klansman after I read your article. And I think it's very useful to watch these movies because there's just so much there. It's all nuanced and it's all relevant. But the more of us that watch this stuff, I think the better, because we're kind of, I think, cutting edge here when it comes to our analysis, but there's just so much work to be done. We have to go back and look at these different directors and their work, as we have been doing. But I'm glad that you're doing it and publishing regularly. So thank you again for the call.
Thank you. All right, bye.
All right, that's Leo Friend. And I'm referring to his website. If you go to autohoax.com, you get the hoax report. So let's go ahead and take a look really quick just so you can get an idea. Autohoax.com is the official hub of the off-world stage perspective. There's 30 people listening on the audio stream, although it's not a live play because I don't have the full version of Restream at the moment. But if you go here, you can generally listen live or catch the latest replay. The Hoax Report, the latest in PSYOPs, media hoaxes, and predictive programming analysis. You have live fakeologists here. So I've got Jake the A-hole. Has Hulk Hogan been replaced? Smart dust in your Coke. Empty store shelves coming soon. We've got Jurassic Liars, Pope Elvis, 6/11 chosen. The next 9/11 is 6/11. And then you have the latest IPS Evening Deprogram, 5/6/25 posted here. So I've been using the RSS feeds from various YouTube channels, as well as blogs and forums. So autohoax.com, again, take a look. Anybody who's creating content in this realm, on the bottom right, we have articles from mindwar.page. In fact, if you just click the links here, mindwar.page, and that was the caller's website, an infuriating enigma. Spike Lee Metascript breakdown. That looks good. Let's take a look. Nukes, Spooks, and Feds, oh my. And this is the one that talks about that movie Black Klansman from 2018. Yeah, the 2018 David Duke character looks exactly like 2025 Nick Fuentes. Same mustache, same slogans, same everything. And then he drew attention to this, the Turner Diaries, which is the Bible of the far right. This is what motivated Timothy McVeigh, who again has the death date of 6/11 at the age of 33. Well, he was inspired by the Turner Diaries, authored by William Luther Pierce, who was born September the 11th, 1933. So 9/11/33. By the way, the 9/11 attacks were spearheaded by Muhammad Atta 33. But look at the cover of the Turner Diaries. You got the New World Order police, and then you have a man and a woman defending their home. And she's got a black and white striped shirt. He's got a polo that's open. Scroll down. In 2020, you had the St. Louis gun-toting incident where the McCloskeys were defending their lawn against BLM with an AR-15 and what looked to be a little golden handgun, but they stepped right out of the Turner Diaries, even with the bricks behind them. How close is that? I mean, this is based off the Turner Diaries. This is meant to invoke this. We talked about this a bit at the time. And then these two went on tour, always dressed up the same way, like it was a costume. And then they went out there in support of Kyle Rittenhouse, a couple of agitators. But they were in this big empty mansion down the street from this poor neighborhood, and BLM marches by. So again, this is all class warfare. Old couple, empty house, big mansion, very rich, gated community, defending it with guns against peaceful protesters who are just marching in remembrance and resistance to systemic racism and the victims of it. It opens up, Black Klansman opens up with Alec Baldwin making reference to the phrase super predators. And this is, again, Alec Baldwin, who later is associated with Trump by consistently playing Donald Trump on SNL. But he's on, I guess, The Birth of the Nation is being filmed, and he's just giving a speech, but he's really bad at it in this film, and they have him repeat a lot of phrases. But basically, yeah, Alec Baldwin is one of these predictive programming proxies. So what I would do with this one, I'd like to take this clip and then use AI and face swap it with Trump. Like, this is what Synchromorpheus was doing. Let's start face swapping the real world characters with their predictive programming counterparts. Anyway, this is mindwar.page. It goes in depth. Here's Nick Fuentes with his mustache, America First, and here's David Duke. And I think this is the actual scene where they all start chanting, never putting your country second, America First, the Klan chanting America First. Just too much. Quite a lot going on here. Anyway, we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow morning with the IPS Morning Deprogram. And if you're not familiar with that, the IPS Morning Deprogram is pretty much just to set the stage for what we're going to talk about later with our open phones. But it's generally about 9 a.m., sometimes earlier. I wasn't able to make it today because my connection was temporarily down, but I turned it back on. So tomorrow morning, we'll go over anything else. So if you leave comments on these videos, I don't miss any comments, and I'll generally bring those up as well the following mornings. So thanks again, Marcel, for bringing in the 5 wrenches. We have 5 new members. I have to really make it a point now to record some member-only content. And then we have a comment here from Lean Dion says, recently, Piers Morgan and Ye interview, Ye corrected him and said, I have 33, not 32 million followers. Yeah, it's a big club. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax or GTFO. We'll see you all later on. And also in Discord. Discord is active again. Go to ips.monster and jump into the Discord server.